I think everything's working. Cool. Good. I set it up all on my own today, guys. You should be so proud of me. All right, so joining us today, obviously, is the illustrious, the missing Enigma. Do you want to give yourself a shout out for anybody who doesn't know who you are?
Yeah, I'm the missing Enigma. My name's Nick. My channel is almost entirely focused on missing persons cases. Every time I release a video, I really try to do the deepest dive I can and try to put something out there that has new information if I can. I don't like reiterating things that have already been done. But if you're interested in missing persons cases, especially ones you probably know from Missing 411, I think my channel's a good one for that kind of information.
I have to agree. Your video on Aaron Hedges is what got us to change our minds about just all of it and start taking a
Right.
much more skeptical look at things.
Yeah.
The level of police like documentation in that was something that we had never done, and we were like, oh god, this guy knows what he's doing. This is cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that was a mind blowing. Even I was surprised by that one.
yeah, it's
Yeah, as it kind of came out and I was reading about it and stuff. Just because when you know a case
mhm.
well, or you think you know a case well because you watch like a documentary or something, and then you find out a lot more information. You're kind of like, oh wow, that really changes my perspective.
Yeah, and these cases specifically definitely see a lot of that. But the reason that we're having you on, or I guess I'm having you on, Aiden's somewhere up in New York or northern Pennsylvania doing something. Uh, but yeah, so the reason that we're bringing you back on tonight is that you did a video on Charles McCullar recently, which I unfortunately have not had the time to watch. I was hoping to get that in, but then we got stuck in New Orleans for like 2 days. So you came across some new stuff, and I know I was informed about it by people who had watched your video and then came to me and were like, "Hey, Nick wants to talk to you." So I'm curious where you netted out, because we're going to talk about Charles McCullar specifically. One of the cases I don't think we've had an opportunity to talk in depth about, you and I. You've been on the show a couple of times, I think. Um,
Yeah.
but that was one of the ones that I think, just like Aaron Hedges, there's those details in the Missing 411 books and movies that you sort of start scratching your head about. Like, did this actually happen? Is this real? What's the source material? And I think that's probably, that as well as the Aaron Hedges case, are probably the two ones that I think most often lead people to question David Paulides overall. But
Hmm.
in these cases, Stacey Aris is another one for me, because I cannot find any evidence that there was ever a lens cap found by the lake, but that's not the point. Um, I netted out with the Charles McCullar video on, this seems like he was killed. Like something happened, either he was hitchhiking and he got robbed, or maybe he stumbled across an illegal growing compound of some sort. But I netted out on, I feel like this was foul play. You, on the other hand, netted out more on it was some sort of accident side of things.
Yeah.
So do you want to take us through like your thought process, your timeline?
Sure. I can take you through the whole timeline if we want to get real specific about it.
Oh, hell yes, get real specific. We got an hour and a half to kill.
Okay. Okay. Let's do it.
Also, for anybody who maybe hasn't seen the show or is new to it, we do a question and answer section at the end. It's usually the last half hour or so. And the way that we do that is we go through and we read super chats. So if you have questions, comments, stuff like that, feel free to throw it in. We will get to it in the last half hour of the show around 8 p.m. So continue, Nick.
All right. All right. I'll go through it. I wrote a lot of this down because we got a lot of dates and times and whatnot. But if you want to chime in at any point, you think I left something out, I'm just going to go through the disappearance, the search, and the discovery, kind of the three main parts of his disappearance. We
Sounds
got
good to me.
Charles McCullar. He was from Alexandria, Virginia, 19 years old, 6'3", 150 pounds.
Which is
Electronics
just
and
a
printing technician.
wild height to weight
Right.
ratio.
I know, right? That was a skinny dude. He was an experienced hiker, camper. Probably learned it from his dad, who seems like he was a hardy fellow. We can get into that.
Yeah, we're going to get into his
Um,
dad.
yeah. On January 8th, 1975, he began a 60-day bus and hiking tour of the U.S. national parks. He stayed in touch with his family throughout most of January. And on January 27th, he's in Eugene, Oregon, staying with a female friend of his named Dorothy. He tells Dorothy that he's going to Crater Lake on the 29th of January with plans to return on February 1st. That's about 4 days. And while there, he just wanted to take pictures of the lake and the surrounding areas. at the time, Crater Lake is covered in snow. Every year it gets tons of snow, 40 feet. At the time, I think they estimate maybe 8 to 10 feet in some
Mm-hmm.
areas, and probably less in others. But he tells Dorothy that if he's not back by February 1st, call the cops. He had a reasonable amount of gear, though not a whole lot. I mean, he had a sleeping bag that was rated to minus 25 Fahrenheit, a tarp and rope to kind of make a little shelter if he needed it, and presumably enough food to last the trip. He told Dorothy that he was planning to take the bus from Eugene, Oregon to Roseburg. That's about an hour-long trip, 72 miles. And then he was going to hitchhike from Roseburg east to Crater Lake. That's, if you were just driving the whole thing, would take an hour and a half. That's 86 miles. But hitchhiking,
Bit
it's
different.
anyone's guess. Yeah.
Also, probably worth
Uh,
mentioning that hitchhiking was a lot more common in the 1970s and 80s than it is now.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. Yeah. So he doesn't come back. And when February 1st rolls around, Dorothy contacts the police as she promised you to do. Search begins. They don't really know where to look for him, because he just vanished. So they don't know if he made it to Crater Lake. They're going along the highways looking for him. The first weekend after he disappears, 80 inches of fresh snow fall.
Mm-hmm.
And that certainly hampers things a bit on the search side. As the search plays out, though, they're able to narrow things down a bit once a few witnesses come forward. And the first one we get is someone who says that they saw Charles at the place called the Dry Creek Store, which is like halfway between Roseburg and Crater Lake. And they said they saw him on the 29th, so the day that he left on his trip. And there's two sources on this that differ. You got a newspaper that says he was sighted there at 7:30 a.m. on that day, and Charles McCullar's father, who says he was sighted there at 6:30 p.m. And I think it's probably the later time.
Mm-hmm.
That would make most sense because
That's when the most people are going to be out and about. The most likely that somebody's going to get spotted.
well, and the next witness, on January 30th is a log truck driver
Mm-hmm.
who says he drove Charles to Stump Lake, which is like not far from where the Dry Creek Store is. And so, and if he was at the Dry Creek Store at 7:30 a.m., I would have thought he would have gone farther that day than just stopping there.
Yeah.
And then, so I think he was there that evening, and in the morning he started moving east some more. This log truck driver described him to a T. A guy from Virginia going to the Crater Lake and taking pictures. But he dropped him off at Stump Lake. So we're still 20 miles out from Crater Lake. But this is basically the last kind of confirmed sighting of him. But the next obvious stop on his journey was a place called the Diamond Lake Resort, because if you needed to stop somewhere and rest, that would be the obvious spot. It's right on the outskirts of Crater Lake. It's a really popular destination for people who want to go skiing or snowmobiling in the area. And their investigation took them there, and they asked for the names of the patrons who were staying there that weekend. And 88 people, names of 88 people were given to them. There is a little discrepancy here, maybe that list may be incomplete, but we can get into that part. And this is really kind of where the initial search for him ends, because they didn't find anything initially, and nothing ever turned up. And Charles McCullar's father, he was very upset about this. He thought that there was some sort of foul play. But
yeah, he thought there was foul play like from before
from the
they even
get-go.
found him.
Yeah, and so in the interim, like right after this, he was sending letters to all sorts of people. We can get into those in a bit, but I'll just quickly go to the discovery of the remains, which was almost 2 years later, October 14th, 1976. We got two hikers that are in Crater Lake itself, two guys from San Antonio, Texas. Their names are Tom Gaines and Paul Taylor. They were on the Pacific Crest Trail near Bybee Creek. They diverted onto a spur trail, which this spur trail is used for camping on the PCT. If you're going on it and you just want to stop somewhere, this is a good camping area. For some reason, they just kept walking into the woods. I really don't know. I wish I could interview these people because I have no idea what they would be doing walking down into this Bybee Creek drainage area.
It is a
But
little
they
odd, but also like when my friends and I go camping, if we're out in like a big area, we often do just kind of go explore.
go exploring,
So
which
it
is
does seem
possible. If they were
possible.
camping, right? If they were camping in that spot, I suppose
Yeah.
they could have been. Let's go see if we can get down to the creek. Maybe you're right. And they just wanted to. And once they made it down to the creek, they found a backpack and some camping gear and other things. They took some keys out of the backpack, Volkswagen keys, and took them back to the ranger station. The ranger there recognized them because there was a Xerox of
Hmm.
the key that Charles was supposedly had on him, and it matched the key that was brought in. And two rangers, Dave Lang and Marion Jack, went to the spot that was described. It's a bowl-shaped canyon in Bybee Creek. They find the backpack. They find some clothes draped on a log, though they believed it was Gaines and Taylor who put them there. They find a jawbone, skull, lower leg bone at the base of a steep ridge. They find a long list of items, but notably absent are Charles's camera and his boots. The area gets searched later with metal detectors, and they find some metal food cans and stuff. And Charles McCullar's father comes in and looks at the area, but that's where the investigation basically ends. That's what we're left with, and there's no real determination as to what happened. But there's really only two possibilities in my mind, and that's either foul play or an accident. And this is very different from if you're familiar with missing 411. I mean, this case I got into
Hmm.
missing 411, and when I heard this case, this really got me into it because in the missing 411 books, it's described that
There's
there's
that
this
little
quote
weird
that
thing. You thinking of the weird thing?
there's this yeah there's this quote in there that they find his pants and they look as if he just melted into the ground and disappeared. And
The way it was
I think
presented the
that
first
strikes a lot of
time,
people.
yeah, the way I heard about it the first time was through Mr. Ballin, and the version of events that he presented was that, and this is not me in any way trying to bash Mr. Ballin. He's a different kind of content creator. He's a storyteller. He's
Right.
not a missing
Well
persons
put.
researcher. So I don't hold him accountable for any of this. I hold David Politis. But yeah, so his version of things, the way he described it, was that Charles' pants were found sitting on a log. His socks were still in the pants, and his feet were in the socks. None of that was true. And I have no idea where David Politis came up with it. Because I believe the story he gave was that he interviewed those two hikers who were there.
Well, the story is that he interviewed Marion Jack,
Mm-hmm.
one of the rangers who
Mm-hmm.
went there, and he said he found Marion, who was still alive at the time. He's not anymore, sadly. But he said that when he talked to Marion, that's where he got the quote. Marion Jack, one of the rangers, he
Mm-hmm.
said that the pants looked like if someone was standing straight up, that they melted straight down into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that if the ranger Jack, if he did say that, if he really meant that
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened or what he actually thought about the case. It's a quote that captures people's imagination. But one thing that struck me about that interview that Politis said he did was that the ranger said that in one of the pant legs he found a broken lower leg bone.
Mm-hmm.
And that struck me because in doing my video, one of the worst parts about this case for a long time has been that the national parks reports about this case were lost,
Mm-hmm.
and that Politis couldn't find them and I couldn't find them for a long time. But
Which of course leads you to ask the question: were they actually lost, or were they lost?
well, and then this last year I found out that
Mm-hmm.
the state of Oregon
Mm-hmm.
actually held copies,
Oh.
and so I got them. And they do describe finding the clothes and that they find a lower leg bone in the clothes, but they
Interesting.
don't describe it as broken. They don't describe finding any feet with
Mm-hmm.
the foot bones or anything like that. But those two things almost match up. And I don't want to go as far as to say like Politis didn't do that interview. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
I
got no
believe that he
evidence
did the
either
interview.
way. I do too, especially because those two things they match up in a way. But there's a lot of little discrepancies between different people's versions of events, like what Mary and Jack said to David Politis. The
Hmm.
person who wrote the report was the other ranger, Dave Lang,
Right.
and he leaves details out like, was that leg bone they found in the pants broken? I don't know, but that would be an important thing to put in. Um, and so there's little discrepancies, but I don't know. I think one of the big things about this case that made me lean towards accidental death is honestly it, that broken leg bone, if it was in fact broken, you know, because the body was found at the base of a steep ridge.
Hmm.
And I wish I could have gone to that spot exactly, because I was in Crater Lake and I tried to get to that spot. I
It's a
show this in
lot
my
harder to get to a lot of these places than I think people realize.
Yeah, and if I'm going to try it again one day, and I'm going to try a different route. My idea, when I looked at it on a map, I saw the forest roads that kind of get semi close to that area, and I was like, well, I could just drive down that and walk right in, no trails or
Mm-mm.
anything. And it's a lot harder to make your own trail than to just walk on a trail.
Yep.
And I could not get to the spot. And once I got to Bybee Creek, it's in a canyon, and that canyon is so steep that I would need a rope to get down it, and I had to give up on that day and try again another day. But one thing that did strike me about being there though was, you're just walking through really thick trees and brush, and you can hear Bybee Creek running, and you think you're going to pop out somewhere and it's just going to be right there in front of you. But instead, I just walked through some brush and there was a steep cliff. I couldn't even see the creek at
Hmm.
all at any point because it was so thick.
Right.
Um, and I was thinking, if it was really snowy there, uh, and someone was walking in that area, things called like cornices can develop where it almost looks like a false ledge,
Hmm.
and you can walk too far and you can trip and you can fall and the
Right.
snow collapses. And that's where my mind started going with this case, was that, well, maybe he was out there and then he came too close to the edge and he just tumbled down that canyon, broke his leg, and there was just no way out.
How far down was it again? I thought it was like some like 8 to 10 feet.
The canyon?
The ledge from the that sits over Bybee Creek. Yeah,
No, it's a lot steeper than that.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I like I said, I'll look it up real quick. I couldn't even see the creek.
Yeah, I'm struggling to
And
find the right spot in my notes right now, which is frustrating.
no, no, it would be something that if you fell down it,
Uh
it
huh.
would be a serious problem.
Gotcha.
Um, because if I thought I could have gotten down there just without a rope, I would have attempted it, but it
Right.
looked too dangerous. Although I went from the opposite direction that the two hikers did. So the way into that Bybee Creek kind
Mhm.
of drainage area might have been a lot easier for them.
Right.
And if
So
I did
you
it,
came in. Did you come in
I
from the
came
park side or from the trail side?
I came in from I was going to the east, coming from the west, going to the east.
Gotcha. Okay. So
So I
McCullar
came
would
in
have
on
been
the
going
west
in the
side
other
of the
way.
park. Exactly, more than likely. And yeah, I don't know. I just determined in my head that was going to be the easy way to get in there,
Yeah.
and absolutely messed that up. It
Easy
was
is
the
not the way to
worst hiking.
describe anything about this.
It was honestly the worst hiking
Yeah.
experience I've ever had.
What
Just
time of
with
year was it for you?
it was summer,
Summer.
and it was excruciatingly hot, and the mosquitoes in Crater Lake are unlike anything I've ever seen. And I don't know if they just like my blood, but I got bit almost 100 times right through the clothes. I was just like covered. I got a sting that like swelled up the size of an egg. And I was just, it was an unhappy time. And uh, yeah, if I went back, I'd go back in a different season and go at it a different way.
Yeah, probably like spring or fall.
Yeah. And
We
yeah,
tried to
so
we tried to plan that right when we went down to the Smokies to look into the Dennis Martin stuff. We went in November. It was like 70 degrees.
yeah.
Why?
Yeah, yeah.
So
It never goes according to plan when you do those things. I swear.
right. Oh no, never. Like how we went to New Orleans and got food poisoning. It was just a great time.
Yeah, something always goes wrong.
So you're thinking then that what happened here is that Charles was off trail hiking and came across this ledge basically. And remind me, the ledge, is it the same height on both sides? Is it a canyon or is it a ledge and then down and then flat?
the the creek itself is like in a very steep canyon,
Got it.
like that. And being at the top of that
Hmm.
and trying to look over it with the brush being so thick and it being so far down, I couldn't see the creek at all.
Right.
Um, the elevation there is, gosh, trying to look it up myself, but it would have been a bad drop. But the question, I suppose, isn't always necessarily like, it's really how could he get there to begin with? That's
Hmm.
the main question.
That's
I,
what I
I
was
think
about
that's
to
the
ask
crux
you
of this
about.
case is how would he get there to begin with?
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to find the exact spot in here where I went over it, but he's like 8 miles from the park entrance, I think, if I remember correctly. I'm gonna pull it up over here, but
that sounds about right.
Ivy Creek, Oregon. Let's pull this bad boy up. Yeah, so the spot he was found, if I remember correctly, was, I want to say, 8 miles from the park entrance and 3 miles off trail, something like that. Or yeah,
That sounds about right, because I think if you were on Rim Drive and just started walking off into the woods, it would be about 3 miles to get to that spot.
yeah. So
It would be significantly closer if you were walking on the PCT, but no one would be
exactly,
really doing that in winter because you
exactly.
couldn't even
It's
see the PCT.
so my thinking with this, based on everything. So first of all, the north entrance to the park was closed.
Correct.
Um,
Most people, well, people go in there, but snowmobilers only.
exactly. So the question is, first of all, like, why'd he enter through the closed side? Did he know if it was closed? Did he get there and figure, well, whatever, I'll go in anyway? Again, 19-year-old kid would not surprise me. I remember thinking I was invincible at that age. But yeah, I mean, looking at it, trying to pull it up right now.
Well, one thing I'll say about the north-south entrance thing is
Yeah.
that I leave it open in my mind that he could have gone to the south entrance. And my main argument for that
Hmm.
would be that Mr. McCullar in his letters, he mentions the possibility of this third witness who may have seen his son. And
Right.
this was an employee at Diamond Lake Resort. And this is just a brief mention in his letters, but he says he talks to an employee there who, around January 30th,
Hmm.
a young man came in late at night and asked the employee how far it was to get around the lake.
Right.
And he said he thought that was his son because he thought it was a question his son would ask. There's not a lot of great evidence there. There's no
Yeah.
description of the individual. But if that was Charles, it almost sounds like he's trying to find out how far it would be if he was trying to get to the south entrance.
Right.
And
Because he could have
and
got there and told somebody about what his plans were, and they were like, "Oh, well, the park's closed from the north. You got to go in the south."
right, because uh Mr. or McCullar Sr.'s argument too was that on the 30th, his son tried the north entrance and failed to get in and turned back and went to Diamond Lake and then asked that question. And if things did go that way, my question would be, well, if he tried the north entrance and failed, what are the chances he would try that again instead of trying to maybe hitchhike around, which is like a 40-mile journey?
Right.
Or
Yeah, it's a long way
mo-
to go to get to the other side of the lake.
yeah, but if you were able to get a ride, it wouldn't be terrible. But that's a big if.
Exactly.
And at the same
At that
time,
point, you would think that somebody would remember giving him a ride to the south entrance.
you would, but you know, we
He definitely didn't
never
have time
found
to
out.
hike it.
No, absolutely not. But we never found out who the driver was that gave
Mhm.
him the ride to the Dry Creek store.
Gotcha.
You know, that person never came forward. The only person that gave him a ride was this log trucker who
Hmm.
took him 20 or from Dry Creek Store to Stump Lake.
Right.
So if there may have been another driver who gave him a ride from there to Diamond Lake. Uh, so I don't know. You know, you hope that someone would come forward saying they gave someone a ride, but it doesn't always happen. The alternative theory I would have about the north entrance would be that if he tried going in there on the 30th and he knew how to make snowshoes, which his dad said that he did, would he try the north again the next day, or would he spend the rest of the 30th and maybe some of the 31st trying to fashion snowshoes
Hmm.
so that he could have an easier time of getting in?
Yeah,
You know, if he had
it's
the knowledge to make them, it would have made his journey a lot easier.
yeah, it's the whole thing. I think really does hinge on that point of where did he enter the park, and then also how did he get all the way over there? Because again, I mean, they didn't find snowshoes. That's
Right, but they
that
didn't
is an
find his
important
shoes
what
either.
they didn't
They
find his
didn't
shoes
find his
either. Yeah.
shoes. And
So the
yeah,
official explanation, if I remember correctly, was that they thought he had fallen into the creek, maybe trying to cross the creek over the snow, fallen in, and ended up getting trapped down there, either hurt and couldn't pull himself back up, or he drowned, or he, died because it was cold. Uh, and then animals in the spring, once it thawed, came and scavenged his body, and that's possibly how his stuff would have ended up elsewhere, also if it were in the river. Um, but from what I remember, and again, it's driving me nuts that I can't find my notes about his campsite, or about his camp. It looked as though he had. There was, if I remember correctly, somebody suggested that it looked as though he had actually set up some form of camp, that he had put stuff away, looked like he had been setting up for the night.
well, Charles Sr.'s big, he wrote a letter and
Hmm.
in it he put his theory about what might have happened to his son. And his theory was that Charles was bedded down for the night somewhere
Yeah,
and that somebody got him while he was sleeping, essentially,
right.
and then dumped his body in Bybee Creek via snowmobile,
Hmm.
which, I mean, I
It
suppose
seems
it is
possible.
possible. It is possible. Today, when I was there, I was wondering how someone could get in via snowmobile, but many years ago, it could have been even more possible. Today, there's just so many trees everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it is possible, but the thing that I found that kind of contradicted what Mr. McCullar was saying about this theory that he had that Charles was asleep and someone attacked him is that Mr. McCullar, Charles's father, also in the same letter talks about how they found his foam, his foam sleeping pad rolled up and
Hmm.
tied. And if he got attacked while he was asleep, that
You
shouldn't
would
be
think.
that way.
Yeah. So I was able to find my notes on what was found actually. So I want to know if this squares with what you found.
Yeah.
So it was there were clothes in his pack. They were still in good condition, so it had to have been protected from the elements. His
Right.
sleeping bag had no rips or tears, which would have indicated that it was manipulated by an animal. Yet it was partially into the creek when it was found. The other one, let's see, his rubber pad was also found. His blue jeans contained no coins, scraps, keys, or anything in the pockets at all. Does that all sound correct
Yeah.
so far? Okay.
This is
Uh,
from Mr. McCullar's letter, right?
yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
If I can. Prior to the discovery of his remains, Crater Lake Park Rangers more than once expressed the opinion. Okay, yeah, here we go. So this is basically what I have regarding his remains. Also, I think it's hilarious that Oregon took the position that it was inappropriate and unwarranted to interview people known to have been traveling to the resort that day. Originally, they were like, that seems a little
They did. They
invasive.
they were they were negligent in a number of
Exactly.
areas for
It's
sure.
oh boy. But yeah, so what I have in here is a quote that I believe this was from Charles Sr. Prior to the discovery of his remains, Crater Lake Park Rangers more than once expressed the opinion that without skis or snowshoes, Chuck would have been unable to travel into the park more than a mile or two at most before becoming exhausted. So that is the one in there that really, for me, was like, this is weird. But as for the remains, they were found 12 miles into the park and a mile from the nearest trail. Uh, and then they found all of the stuff I mentioned, as well as scraps of red fabric and red buttons, as well as scraps of underwear scattered about. Many of his possessions weren't found, like his mess kit, his boots, his knives, his sleeping bag cover, his aluminum pack rack, basically a bunch of his camping gear.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure what I meant by this, but he had two zippers found in the zip position, one atop the other. I don't know necessarily what I was referring to there.
Hmm.
Empty
I
food
remember. I
containers
remember
were
that line.
found, but Chuck always followed the leave no trace guidance.
Right.
Senior doubted that he fell into the creek, as he would have taken off his wet clothes to put on dry ones. This is that he fell into the creek prior to dying. Basically, he fell into the creek, survived, put on dry clothes. Let's see, what else do I have in here? It was found within inches of the creek. The remains clad in underwear, 2 pairs of jeans, a red shirt, and perhaps socks, but his boots were gone. That all square?
Yep.
All right. Let's see. And so, yeah, that's kind of the gist of what was found that I have in here. I just want to make sure that I had everything correct. It was suggested that other people might have looted the site, and that's why he didn't have anything in his pockets, but nobody reported the body, and also,
Yeah. I don't know if it necessarily requires. People brought that up to me too, that it requires people looting the body.
yeah.
Um, uh, and I've finally pulled it up here. If he would have fallen from the top of the Bybee Creek, what I call a canyon,
Mhm.
that's a 200-foot tumble.
It's 200
So
feet?
yeah,
What?
yeah,
Are we looking at the same? Hang on.
yeah.
Now I need to look at the topographical map really quick, because I'm like, wait a minute. All right. So also it's frustrating because Bybee Creek splits into like
Yeah.
a couple of different ones. Sorry, I'm just trying to get like, it was a mile off of the road. Was it a mile off the road or a mile off the trail?
Let me see here.
Mile from the nearest trail,
Mile from the
which would
it's
have
much further
been,
from the main road.
yeah. So we're talking a mile from the nearest trail, which would be which trail is that?
It would be the Pacific Crest.
Okay, so it is Pacific Crest. Okay, so he would have been
You
going
can
from the
The way
Pacific
to
Crest
identify
Trail.
it, if you're looking at Bybee Creek and you're
Yeah.
looking at the topographic, there's like this. It's kind of just shaped like it's a circular, semicircular, maybe even rectangular, almost. I don't know, oval, and
Hmm.
it's like just this indentation in the creek, where the creek is on the north um, end of it,
Gotcha.
and his
All right.
remains were found at the top left hand corner of that.
I see what you're
Um,
talking about now. Yeah, damn, that's a lot steeper than it was in my mind, because I think it was Chuck's letter. I think is what I was referring to, where he
yeah.
described what he thought happened, where he described this as being considerably less steep.
You're right, because he said someone could like snowmobile kind of along the edge.
Yeah.
And when I and I was shocked because I didn't think it was that steep when I was going there. And then
Right.
when I got there, that's what foiled me, because I was like, whoa, I thought I could just walk down to the creek.
Now,
And I realized I couldn't.
is it that steep
Unless
all the way up, or is it just that one spot a mile in?
I think it's just that one kind of area. I think if you went around and came from the other direction where Gaines and Taylor came in,
Hmm.
I don't think they had a problem because yeah, because they were coming in from the other side. I think if
Right.
there's got to be a way in, obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely. I'm looking at the topographical right now. It starts out a lot shallower. We're looking at, trying to see the,
Coming from
yeah.
east
So
to west.
yeah, so
Yes.
I mean, it goes down. I'm looking at these. These are like, no, coming from west to east. It starts out a lot shallower
West
than
to
it
east.
gets.
Oh, I see what you're
Because
saying.
it goes from being like, these are it's 40 feet between the lines. So we're talking about a couple hundred feet at first, and then it gets down to a point where like the top is at 5,000 feet and the bottom is at like 4,000, like a mile from
Yeah.
the trail. How did you locate the exact spot where his body was found?
Um, in the national park record copies that I got
Uh
from
huh.
Oregon, there was a really, really good map with a
Damn.
location. And
So
and one of the rangers drew a map of the area out with hand and showed where all the pieces were found, where the
right.
skull was found, and what the topographical makeup of the area looked like. And I
Hmm.
just matched that up as best I could to what we see on Google Maps.
Gotcha.
Um, and so he was found. That's hard for me to describe, but it looked like his body was on the south side of the creek,
Okay.
and in the top left corner area of that divot right there at the base, right before the canyon starts heading kind of southward.
Okay.
He was found right there, and yeah,
All right.
which you could say, I mean, I get Mr. McCullar when he was saying someone could dump a body. It's possible someone tossed a body down there, I suppose, but
Yeah. It's so. I'm just thinking. So is this is before it splits, right? Into just
yeah,
kind of that little
yeah.
oval.
Yes,
So
yeah,
before
right
that,
before it's split.
right before that. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Just gonna readjust because I just want to give people an idea of where we're talking about here. All right. So move this guy over here. Put it over my face. So for
Oh, sweet, you
those,
can bring it up?
yeah, I can pop it over onto the other screen. All right, here we go. So the trail, for those viewing at home, trail's about right here. Kind of follows this dashed line around here. But if we're selecting there, then we basically have, if that's the nearest point on the trail, mile, it's going to be somewhere in this general area, which, as you can see, looking at the map, is that's steep. That's definitely more than like the 16 to 20 feet that I was thinking. Um, and in terms of where that is in the park, that's the thing, is it is like in the park. The entrance
Yeah.
is up over this way, and you got to go. I mean, you're literally walking 8 to 10 miles before you get to where he probably went off trail. Which I think is the other question I have is, did he go off the trail where the creek meets the trail? Like, what do you think happened here?
Well, my best guess, I guess. I mean, and when I started trying to formulate a theory for like what could happen in an accident, I didn't want to just depend on, well, the fact like, well, maybe he made snowshoes
Mm-hmm.
and was able to walk in on those. I really wanted to see if there was any possible way someone could make that walk at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Right,
And
not just with snowshoes.
right. And I contacted a bunch of YouTubers, like the ones that you always see outdoors, walking
Mm-hmm.
in deep snow and building snow caves and stuff. And I literally presented them with all of the details of the Charles McCullar case. 19-year-old guy, he's fit, he's healthy, he knows how to hike, but could he walk this in deep snow,
Mm-hmm.
possibly 8 to 10 feet? And all of them said no, he couldn't do it without snowshoes. But
Definitely not without snowshoes.
a few of them said there would be an exception to that, and that was if the snow had melted and then refrozen to create a hard enough crust that you could
Mm-hmm.
walk on. Because they say, you get lots of different types of snow, which is true. You get, the powdery kind that you just
Mm-hmm.
sink into and you can't move, and it just kind of traps you and you can't really walk in it. But frozen snow, sometimes you can walk on it relatively easily.
But for a
And
full
I'm not,
mile,
well, it, I mean, one thing that made me think this could possibly be it is that if you look at the weather records for the
mm-hmm.
time he entered the park, right before there was this pretty good thaw where the temperatures were in the 50s, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of unusual for that time of year. And then right before he enters the park, they plummet down to 0.
Yeah,
And so there was a thaw and a refreeze. And
right.
I'm not saying that the snow was, because no one knows what the snow was like, but it just gave me the thought like, well, I mean, there's a possibility that he was able to walk on it easier than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
And the searchers would not have experienced the same thing because 80 inches of snow fell like right after he disappeared.
Yeah,
And so
it's
fresh snow would have prevented the similar conditions. And I don't know, if I hadn't have come across those weather conditions that
mm-hmm.
happened right before he entered the park, the thaw for a few weeks and then a deep freeze, I wouldn't even have brought it up.
Right.
But it puts something in my mind that's like, well, maybe he didn't have as hard of a time moving around as we think he might have, but I don't know.
Yeah. So when you're making a very good case for this, you are successfully making me question myself. Uh, so I'm just trying to think. I can see how he would have gotten in. The big sticking point for me was the national park rangers saying stuff along the lines of like in the letter, Chuck Sr. says Rangers remained puzzled as to how he had gotten there without equipment for travel in the snow. Um, and then there was another one. Where is it? Let me see if I can find the exact quote. Of course I can't. Why would anything ever go as I had hoped it would? Um,
I know the Rangers never really
Here it is.
considered it a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the prior to the discovery of his remains, Crater Lake Park Rangers more than once expressed the opinion that without skis or snowshoes, Chuck would not have been able to travel in the park more than a mile to. So basically, if I remember correctly, the Rangers basically went, "We didn't search that area because we didn't think he could get there."
Yeah.
Like there just was, in their minds, it was inconceivable that somebody could do that. Of course, Chuck being an especially light individual, I would make it more feasible for him to do that. My big question, the question that I always end up asking with these cases where there are sort of these two possibilities of like, was this an accident? Was this foul play? Is, why? What was the motive? Why did he go off trail? So I
That's
guess you've been to the area. Obviously you weren't there in the snow, but what is there anything that stuck out to you that was like, this looks like maybe it's a trail. This looks like an interesting path. Maybe there's something scenic he would have been going for. We know he was trying to take pictures.
well, this is the sticking point for my own theory
Hmm.
is the why. Why it say he could do this? Why would he want to go to this spot in
Yeah.
this area? And I don't have like a great answer for that because of being there, I hate the place already. I don't want to go back. I think that is the worst place ever. But I talked to the rangers who work there before I went to that spot just to let them know I was attempting that trek so that if I, got Charles McCullar, they come look for me.
Hmm.
And they told me that that was their favorite spot in the park. And at the time I was like, "Oh, really? Cool. It sounds awesome." And I don't know if they were like pranking me because it
Well,
was
I will
so
tell you, when
bad.
I became a Freemason, right before my initiation for my entered apprentice degree, one of my buddies, the guy who had told me I should become a Freemason, I remember him telling me, "I don't know if you'll be able to handle the goat." And then he
Oh,
proceeded to not
gosh.
explain what he meant by that.
Yeah.
There was no goat.
Yeah.
He just thought it would be funny. So I would not be
That's a
shocked at
classic.
all
You got
if your friends were like, "Oh yeah, it's a great area. I love that. I take the kids," and then it's the hardest hike you've ever done.
Yeah. So
Ugh.
I don't know. I don't know if those Rangers were being. Hopefully, they weren't messing with me and like playing with my life a little bit. But you never know.
I doubt they'd have sent you to your death.
Right. But I it, when I think of like when I was up on Rim Drive when I was there, which Rim Drive is the road that goes all the way around the lake. I was on the west end of Rim Drive and I was
Hmm.
looking down towards Bybee Creek, and you can almost see it from Rim Drive because it's a slope that just kind of goes down into
Yeah.
and then goes down into the creek. And I was thinking, gosh, if I just started walking from right here, I could easily probably walk to Bybee Creek. And it would have been, because I was sitting there after I did my hike and I was driving around and I was like, wow, I should have tried that direction instead.
Right.
And I don't know if he was on Rim Drive somewhere and just decided to, because they said he wanted to take pictures of the lake and surrounding areas. It's one of those questions I can't answer. Is like why would he want to go take pictures down there? I don't know if he just
Because it's not
wandered
like
off trail.
it's not your normal lake where everything around it's a little higher. It's a volcano.
Right. So the lake is higher than the
Yep.
yeah. So
So it's not like
you're in
going
a
down there he was going to get better views of the lake.
right. And I don't know if if I was there in winter, I don't know, maybe it would be easier to see something of interest. But I mean, mainly the thing of interest is the
Hmm.
lake and not the surrounding territories. So I don't know if Charles is just a weird dude who decided to walk out in the middle of nowhere. But if there is one flaw in my theory, that would be it. Is the
Yeah.
why would he go there? And And while I acknowledge that, when I think about the possibility of foul play in this case, and it's harder for me to get to foul play still because a lot of things have to fall into place for a killer to be after him, and
I
for the
guess,
killer to even want to drop him in this spot
yeah. So
is
I
kind
guess
of
what are your hangups with the foul play angle? Assuming that it's not just that you think the other one is more possible.
um okay, yeah. The foul play, mainly they found a lot of his clothing. They didn't find all of it, like the shoes and stuff, but none of his clothing had any blood stains or anything on it. And
Hmm.
while it is possible that a killer could have given Charles a bloodless death, I don't know if they like strangled him or something,
Right.
but
Because the
um
remains weren't in condition to see any soft tissue injuries.
right. And but then again, it makes me want, like, where would they be in a position to do that? If they came up on him while he was sleeping in camp somewhere, what, there's some guy wandering around in the woods in the snow and he just walks up on a dude and starts strangling him.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
and
I don't like the explanation that he died there. Definitely don't like that. I think if he died, it was either somebody picked him up as a hitchhiker and killed him and brought him into the park to dump his body. We know that serial killers back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s were all over national parks. That was their favorite place to be. I don't mean that they were everywhere, just like that was typically a place they liked to stalk because it's just so
sure.
remote. It's also on federal land, so the whole business of investigation gets weird. I so I my thinking is either, maybe he was on the trail and there was somebody who was staking it out for serial killing, but at the same time it's the middle of winter. It's
Right.
not the busy season, which on the one hand, not the
Yeah.
busy season is when a serial killer would want to do something like that, but on the other hand, you got to assume that your victims will be there.
Right.
So
And if and the serial killer, but if they were, and obviously this did happen. I mean, you look at Gary Ridgway just up in like Washington and Oregon, even he picked up hitchhikers and killed almost like 100 of them, they
mhm,
believe. But also a lot of the times serial killers, they go for young women.
yeah,
That's mainly the type of, and I think of Charles, even if with his winter gear on, this guy's a 6'3" guy
yeah,
who probably looked bigger than he was. And for a serial killer, that's not something you usually want to mess with.
yeah. But
You don't want to have to really fight or worry about having to fight, I would think. And just, the stature of Charles and it being in the winter, if you're going around looking for your prey or whatever, I mean, you got to be really hoping for it if you're hoping for a hitchhiker in winter.
yeah,
Um,
which makes it
but
would have to be almost have to be crime of opportunity.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing I can think of is that he stumbled across an illegal grow somewhere.
But
And
would they be in operation in the winter,
well, that's the thing, is maybe they wouldn't be in operation, but you could be in a situation where it was people who were living there, maybe checking up. I will agree, there's too many coincidences that have to happen for it to be like a super likely explanation. But that's the thing with these cases, is like all of the simple explanations have been ruled out. We got to look at the weird stuff, which I think you've made a good case for him falling into the river or the creek. I think that, first of all, how much steeper it is than I thought it was is important. That was something I missed. The other one is the snow being the melt that you mentioned, because that one did not occur to me, that it might have been that the snow melted and refroze and therefore was harder, more solid. He was able to walk on it. Um, I think I'm still not sold on it being an accident, but I definitely have more questions for my own conclusions. Um, you
That's
know,
where I was trying to get.
yeah, like,
I think in your video, I think you said nobody that had two brain cells would think this was an accident. So if I've got you to switch up on
yeah,
that a
you
little bit,
got me. I'm
I'm
thinking
doing
you
my
could
job. I got
somebody
three
somebody
brain
with
cells.
three might pull it off. Yeah,
Well,
I mean, huh?
and again with the killer thing, it would have to be a killer who had a kind of like a snowmobile at the ready. I feel like, you
Yeah,
know,
that is the
because they must have
other.
had it. They must have had it in the back or something, ready to go. And like you said, it takes a lot of coincidences to get there. Is it possible? Sure, people win the lottery, you know, but oof, it's hard for me to get on board with that. And of a lot of places you could dump a body with a snowmobile, uh, that's a tough one to get to. It's a tough one to get to no matter what. Uh,
Unless it was one of the
and driving a
Rangers.
That's an interesting thought. I
That's like the only thing that comes to mind is, I mean, if there was one way to ensure nobody ever figured out what happened here, it would be if one of the Rangers did it. But again, I think that if you, I will say this much, if you can provide me with an explanation of why he went down there, I am fully on your
right.
side. That is the sticking point for me too right now. Is I'm
And
like,
it makes
why?
I understand that. Exactly. The why.
Um,
Why would you want to go down there?
I mean,
And well, one thing that occurred to me about the why too is that maybe he didn't go down there. And that, for a while there, I was playing around with this theory that maybe he died further up or
mhm,
further up by Bee Creek and more on the walls of the caldera
mhm,
that is Crater Lake. And then over 2 seasons, his body and stuff got washed down because
yeah,
the snow melts and it makes a lot of water. And that's 10 feet of snow melting, it can wash all kinds of stuff down. And so having that over 2 seasons,
yeah.
it shocks me that his body would stay in the same place
Pull it
because
up.
though that river comes up quite a bit every year when the snows melt. And and one other thing that could be supporting a foul play angle is obviously the missing camera and stuff, but
Right.
and the
That could also
missing he had
wash.
traveler's
Yeah.
checks, but that could wash as
Well,
well, and the
that's
traveler's checks were never cashed or anything.
yeah. I mean, what I'm thinking here. So first of all, this is one thing I didn't even think to check out while I was doing it myself. This was again, forgive me. This was a year ago when I wasn't quite as experienced with this.
No worries.
But Bybee Creek, does it flow away from the lake or towards the lake?
Away from the lake.
Flows away from the lake. All right, got it.
Yeah.
So that's definitely important to consider. Then I'm glad you mentioned that part. Yeah,
So
I
he
mean,
could
the
have
thing is,
died
if the
closer
camera,
to
if he died closer to the lake and he was kind of washed down, the camera probably wouldn't have floated. It probably
right,
would have sunk straight to the bottom, hence why nobody
right.
found the camera. Um, and it
And they
means that
never
he didn't
looked up.
necessarily have to
Yeah.
be quite so far
Right.
off of the trail. I want to really quickly.
But then I get to the point where I'm going, well, if that was the case, is there a spot along this area that he could have fallen and broken his leg and then froze to death from hypothermia? Because obviously the steepness of the area isn't as severe
Mhm.
higher up on the caldera there.
I would be curious what that area looks like with
Right.
8 to 10 feet of snow. Like if the
That's true.
trails are depressed, as opposed to the standard. I just have it up on screen right now so people can see. But if the trails are depressed, then it would be easy to end up heading down towards Bybee Creek because the trail does turn off just west of Wizard Island. There is a trail turnoff that can take you down that way. I'll see if I can pull it up on All Trails really quick. I don't know if it would have been there in um
Right. The trail looked different.
1973.
The
Yeah,
trail did look different in 70 and 75.
right.
And in fact, it was called the Oregon Skyline Trail, and a part of it ran right along the north ridge of Bybee Creek. So it used to be way closer to the area where they found his body.
Right. Ah, here we go. What did you say it was called?
It was called the Oregon Skyline Trail. And then
Gotcha.
and then that eventually just turned into part of the PCT.
Yeah. So there
And well, they made some
are
adjustments to it as well.
interesting. Okay. So now at least, basically right in that spot, there is something called the Lightning Spring Trail, which basically takes itself straight down to Bybee Creek. So I wonder if that was there in some capacity. I want to see if All Trails will give me any information on when it came up, like when that trail was officially added.
Right.
But I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, it's hard to find these things. And then also when you go there, you find out that they don't even exist sometimes.
Yeah, that it's
Um,
like a bushwhack or something where it's not quite
yeah,
as.
well, the initial road I was planning to take inland into Crater Lake,
Uh-huh.
uh, I'm glad I didn't take it because the rangers told me not to, and I crossed it when I actually was walking in there, and I
Mhm.
found out why, because it doesn't exist. It's on Google Maps, but the road is completely overgrown with
Wait,
trees.
I'm curious. What's it called?
It's like, let's see. I took road 6260,
Okay.
and it's road 400 right above that one that goes along Deer Creek. That thing doesn't exist.
Let me Deer. I'll pull up Deer
At
Creek,
least at least a
Oregon.
good portion of it doesn't.
That's got to be the wrong Deer Creek. There's Roseburg.
Deer Creek is like right below Bybee.
Gotcha. Yeah, of course, it never actually gives me what I want to see. Okay, so gonna go down towards these creeks. There's Bybee. There's Deer. Oh yeah, there's Road 400 running along Deer
Yeah.
Creek, and you're telling me it's just not there?
Yeah, that was the one I said I was going down. And then they were like, "No, no, don't do that. Go
Oh
down
yeah.
6260."
It on even on Google Maps, it's like
Is it? I didn't I
it's
should have done that maybe.
it's a dirt road just surrounded by trees. I can see why they would say don't do that.
Yeah, there was just a ton of young trees coming up, and there
Yeah,
would be no way for a car to get down it.
yeah.
It's like it's not maintained at all.
Let me see. Is there even a Google? No, there's not a street view for it. Yeah,
Oh, that would be hilarious. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It looks like it splits off of a paved. Nah, it splits off of a gravel road, and yeah, it's just basically a dirt road
Yeah,
running through a ton of trees.
all those roads back there were kind of rough dirt forest roads that didn't look like they see a lot of travel.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm guessing that those are like access roads that are not
yeah,
maintained.
yeah,
But
yeah. They
yeah,
told me
yikes.
that 6260 is the only one that they regularly maintain, so that's the one I went down. Yeah,
Yeah, Google being a little bit tricky with us here. I mean, so I mean, if there was anything like that Lightning Spring Trail there, it's very feasible then that he would have maybe tried to follow it down, thinking that it was going to take him somewhere interesting, fallen in,
yeah.
and he could have gotten washed down. Yeah, I mean,
Well, when I keep thinking about it, I leave it open that he could have taken the north and could have taken the south, maybe if he was somehow able to hitchhike it. If he did take the south, his trip would have been a lot easier overall because the highway that goes from the west and then from west to south, that highway is completely snow plowed in the winter, and he would have had a lot less to travel if he did that. And if McCullar Sr. is at all on point with
mhm,
his idea that Charles tried to get in on the 30th through the north and turn back, I got to think he must have tried to do something different.
yeah,
And because he must have felt pretty pressured, because if he wasn't in the park by the 31st already and he's supposed to be back by the February 1st, he didn't have much time to get in and get out. And so I got to think he mixed it up somehow or figured out a way to get in or did something, unless, of course, someone killed him. But,
yeah.
you know,
Which
um,
I'll admit right now, I think yours feels more likely, especially if that road was paved. I have no problem with him taking the road and then going off trail accidentally, or even trying to, if he was on the trail, which still seems like a lot, especially if the road is right there. I would assume he walked the road. Um, if he was on the trail though, I wonder if maybe he did like come to a spot over a creek. I want to take one more look at it because it's then we can go to questions, but I just want to take one more look at the topography of the area. Okay, so there's where Bybee flows up. There is a trail that leads down off of it. And if we pull up all trails, yeah, I mean, you basically can come right off the the PCT.
and if he would have died in almost any other spot in the park other than kind of at the bottom of like a really steep canyon, I would
Right.
probably be all on board with foul play because you could take a body and just dump it anywhere in the woods. You don't have to throw it down a canyon
Yeah, no, you don't.
necessarily. And the fact that, you know, that that interview with Marion Jack said he had that broken lower leg bone, that's like, oof. Could you throw a body and then it breaks the leg even though it's
Mhm.
all limp? Maybe, but
Yeah,
usually you're
oh,
more
no.
likely to break something, you know, when you're trying to brace yourself
Yeah,
from a
but
fall.
based on the number of these things that I've come across, it seems very possible to me. I will say, um, I mean, Jim McGrogan had a whole bunch of broken bones. He didn't break his legs or his arms, but he had like crushed chest and his skull
That was that
was.
guy in like Vail,
That was
Colorado,
Vale,
right?
yeah, the one who, in my opinion, it looks like that's a weird one because it's like, well, the most plausible way that he gets where he is that he makes a wrong turn going up. Instead of taking the Iceman Hut Trail, he takes the Bald Mountain Bushwhack, which is not nearly as well maintained as the Iceman Hut Trail. But in that case, he would have to take the Bald Mountain Bushwhack up. That would take him to the peak of Bald Mountain, at which point he could have fallen off of Bald Mountain and ended up in Boots Creek, which is where he was found. The problems with that are more timing related, where basically they had already been hiking for hour or 2 hours. The turnoff was only a mile in. These are guys who are in good shape. They shouldn't be stopping for a break only a mile in. You would assume that they've gotten a couple of miles. But again, that's a different. I'm happy to talk about that one if you ever take a look at it. That's one of those ones where I started out much more on the like, this has no good explanation, and then kind of got to like, if somebody misreported something, this is very easily solvable.
Yeah.
But yeah, with McCullar, I mean, I think you make a really compelling case. I am leaning personally more towards accident at this point. But I'm
Yes.
definitely going to go back and look at it and
Oh
see if I
yeah.
can like, because if I go back and I look at it and I find out there were several other young men who died in the general area, maybe in a different season, then I'm gonna have questions for you. Uh,
Well, speaking of that, there is one other case, but I feel like it almost just helps my argument. There's this other guy that's another missing 411 case, Crater Lake
which one are you
guy,
thinking of?
but B.B. Bukowski,
Ooh, I don't think I've looked
older
at that one.
case.
Okay.
It's an older case, happened prior to McCullar. I could be wrong, in the 30s maybe is when it happened.
I hate
But
those
this
ones
guy,
because it's. You think it's hard to find information on something that happened 10 years
oh,
ago?
right. Yeah.
The
But
Alfred
on
Beelhart's one he talks about, I can't find anything.
the one where a kid supposedly gets yanked back
Yeah.
from a ledge that no one can ever remember how, yeah, I couldn't ever find anything about that one either. Um, but BB Bukowski, he was a photographer as well.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Crater Lake in the winter trying to take photographs of the beauty in winter or whatever. And he was living in winterized Crater Lake in the 30s. He dug a huge like snow cave
Mm-hmm.
and was living in a snow cave uh, in Crater Lake. He disappeared. No one found him, but they eventually, I think, they find like some of his equipment at the bottom of the caldera
Mm-hmm.
towards the lake,
Yeah.
and which is a steep drop. And that's all we know. Never found his body, but it looks like you could fall in the winter by being too close to the edge.
Yeah.
And if I had to guess, that's what happened to him too. Is that
Right.
the snow piles up and then you get a little too close to the edge, so
And it
much
just
so that
falls out
the
from
edge
under
isn't
you.
really there and it just falls out. And that's what I think happened to BB Bukowski, and that's a missing 411 case.
How do you spell his name?
It's just BB is just like his first initials for whatever they
Okay.
stand for. So two capital B's. Bukowski, I think, is Bakowski.
There's his photographic society page. Cold cases. Yeah. Cow. No, it's not coming up on the cold cases page, but here. Yeah. Shrouded in mystery is the fate of B.B. Bukowski, a photographer who sought to record the pristine beauty of the Crater Lake National Park with its snow mantle in 1911. Man, that's wild. I'll have to look into that one even more.
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, it's funny because it's a little bit like history repeating itself.
Yeah.
But but then again, it could just mean Crater Lake is really dangerous in winter, you know?
Dude took
Uh,
took some pretty pictures. I'm gonna show people really quick.
yeah, he took great pictures of the park, and this was 1911 that he
Yeah,
died, so quite a while before Charles. And but I think he probably died in a similar fashion.
it would make
But
sense.
his makes more sense because he was on the edge of the caldera taking pictures of the lake in winter. That's what everyone's trying to take pictures of. That is dangerous.
Yeah.
We don't know why Charles would go outside of that area and go down the slopes into the Bybee Creek area.
He also should have known better. That's the other thing that bugged me about this one is like of a lot of we've looked at a lot of these cases where it's like, this was a person who had no business being where they were. And then you
Yeah.
every once in a while, like Jim McGrogan, like he should not have been. The one thing he should not have done was separate from his friends, and he did. But like you look at like Bart Schleier. I don't know if you looked at that one, but that's
I'm familiar with it.
up in the Yukon. The guy is a grizzly bear tracker. He tranquilizes grizzly bears and then puts collars on them. And his puzzles me because I'm like, how did this guy of all people, how did this happen to him? This seems like one of those cases, maybe not quite as aggressive as Bart's because he was in his late 40s, early 50s, but Chuck's got like, I mean, you look at Chuck Sr., somebody did some digging on him for me and came up with he was like definitely special forces. The guy was just knew way too much. Probably pre-Green Beret, but definitely like whatever was right before the Green Berets, that was probably him.
Yeah.
He had taught Chuck everything. The kid knew everything he could possibly need to know. It bugs me that he would do something so stupid, but at the same time, he was
Overconfidence,
19.
man. You know, I don't know.
Like,
You know,
I
I
do
think
wonder.
hubris is a big killer of people. You know, they think they can do things that they shouldn't.
Yeah,
You know, and it's dangerous. You know, Crater Lake in winter with you that much snow on the ground.
yeah, it's I think if it was foul play, then I think that there would be two things that would crop up. Either there would be a cluster of cases that tie back to that resort, Diamond Lake, or there would be a cluster of cases along just that route coming through, one of the routes coming through or around the park. So if those are there, then I'm going to look into it and see, you know, if there's something there, I'll definitely revisit that. Otherwise, you know, I think I may just add something to the description and be like, by the way, guys, go watch this one. Because he found stuff I didn't.
Well, you know, I can send you those if you want.
I would love to read through them if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. And I also, you know, I found two of the only pictures that seem to exist from the discovery too. They don't really show much. They kind of show what the area looked like a little bit. You don't get to see anything of what they found. But yeah, so there is some new information and, you know, reading, finally, we got the, you know, at least what seems like one good report from someone who was there on the ground when it happened, instead of relying on just politest interview with a ranger that kind of exaggerates a little bit or I don't know, but
yeah,
he definitely didn't melt into the ground.
No, I will say I think him being the victim of somebody killing hitchhikers or one of the rangers is a lot cooler story. I think yours has more compelling evidence to it.
And you know, and that to say too that the authorities were really negligent in this case,
horribly.
Still. And I think the big issue is that when it happened initially, they just thought this was some 19-year-old kid who was just doing his thing and didn't want to report back to anyone. He was just, and so they didn't really care. They were like, "Oh, he'll pop up," you know. We don't really
figured
need
he
to
was a
search for
hippie.
him. Yeah, and they didn't really start caring until Mr. McCullar started writing letters.
Yeah, it really seems that's the part that I will say. You know, the title of the video we did, I think, is still something along the lines of like the FBI wouldn't investigate his case, which is true. I will probably leave that as the title. Regardless of what actually happened to him, whether it was foul play or an accident, whatever, I think that the one glaring issue with this, and something that is still a problem today, is the way the case was handled when it was first brought to the authorities' attention. I mean, even as late as 2009, you see that there have to be laws made to get people to go after to actually follow up on missing persons reports. We
Yeah.
recently covered Dakota James, who was a kid who went missing in 2017. It's weird saying
Was
kid
that
because
is
he
that a
was older
smiley
than me at
face
the time.
killer
Yeah,
case?
which
Oh, okay.
we're
I
doing
thought
a
I recognized.
whole series on that whole thing, and with each and every one, I am less and less convinced that there is a connection across the country. But
Right.
I am becoming more convinced that maybe there's more serial killers than we're being told about.
I could buy that. I could buy that more than an organization
Yeah,
of serial killers
yeah, I
because
think.
some of those cases do reek of foul play.
Oh yeah, the La Crosse, Wisconsin ones. I don't know if you've looked into them. We did a video on it recently, but it's like 5 of the 10 that were identified as potential smiley face killers victims. Uh, only five. I only think 5 of the 10 even qualify. But all of them, every single one, the body was either found in the water directly adjacent to Riverside Park in La Crosse, Wisconsin, or within a couple miles downstream of Riverside Park. And
Hmm.
like every single person in that list of 5 was on the same street at the same strip of bars. Some of them went to the same bars. Obviously, these are spaced out over 10 years, but every single time they were at one of these bars on this one road.
Right.
It's just one of those things that you're like, huh,
Hell of a coincidence. Yeah.
that's weird. Is that, for me, my angle is like maybe this was a female lure and a male killer. Because even with them being as drunk as they were, it's still like, could a woman take down a dude who's 6'2"? Probably not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Well,
not
that
to get
guy
too
who
off
wrote the
topic, but
book. Yeah. The guy was Steve Gannon, I think might have been his
Kevin
name.
Gannon
Who
and
wrote the
Anthony
book?
Duarte
Kev-
are the
oh,
two main
they wrote
ones.
the Drowning Forensics, right?
Mhm.
That was a really good book,
I gotta
and
read it. Yeah.
those guys are like whip smart. But
Oh,
then
I think they're
they
completely
bring out
legit. It's,
they bring out the smiley face killer theory that it's an organization, and you lose me a little bit with that.
that's where I'm lost too. And as I was watching the show, there were definitely a few points where I was like, the average person definitely wouldn't catch weird things in the TV show. There's only 6 episodes. But when you've been doing this for a little while, you're like, okay, why'd you leave that detail out? Like, you
Oh, right.
definitely know what happened. You definitely know something you're not telling me, which drives me insane. But what I was gonna say is the Dakota James one. This is 2017. This is 6 years ago. Yikes. This is 6 years ago. He was reported missing. I think it was Saturday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning. The police told his parents they had to wait 24 hours to file a missing persons report. They didn't. Not. I know for sure Minnesota, but I also looked it up in Pennsylvania because I'm Pennsylvanian. You don't have to wait. There's no law. There's not even policy. It's just the police look at it and they go, every single time this happens, he's just drunk on a bench, and we've wasted resources for nothing. The problem is, once you get to that point of being like, well, he's just drunk, he's on a bench somewhere, is every once in a while, they're not just drunk on a bench somewhere. So, I think that's the one big thing that I hope comes of the interest in missing 411, smiley face killers, all of that stuff, is I hope that people do hold police more accountable, hold people's feet to the fire in situations like this, because, the way I'm seeing it, with cases like La Crosse, Wisconsin, with Pittsburgh, I'm sure when I look at Tommy Booth in a couple of weeks, he's Philadelphia. I'm sure I'm going to find a whole bunch that are just like him. I think that there's definitely kind of a culture of the police know what's best. They've done their best. We need to trust them. That needs to be challenged, because a lot of these guys, they're not Law and Order SVU. They're not Criminal Minds. A lot of these guys are small town cops who, they're not even bad people. They're just completely overwhelmed, and there's nothing they can do. And what ends up happening is they go, all right, well, we're shutting it down. We'll handle it internally. It gets filed on a shelf somewhere, and nobody ever looks at it again until someone makes a stink because a very similar thing happened or something like that. But you have me on Charles McCullar. I am on your side now. I will officially say I'm on your side. I am a man with two brain cells.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Together we
No.
have four.
Hell yeah. No. Well, I appreciate that because I didn't know when we did this if I was going to be more on the side of foul play or what.
Mhm.
But what is important about these things is actually talking about them with other people who know the case really well, because it furthers the understanding of the case and
Mhm.
it helps flesh out my ideas because I need to be able to justify, I can't
Yeah.
justify why he would go there. And I need to figure that out, or someone does. Someone has that now to further the case if they
Yeah.
wanted to look into it.
I I mean,
And
I'm gonna send an email. I mean, if you've talked to the guys, they might be more familiar with you, but I'm gonna send an email to the Crater Lake Ranger Station and be like, hey, do you have any pictures of this spot in late January or any heavy snowfall? Like, can you show me what
that
this
would be
trail
interesting.
looks
Yeah.
like? Because I'm curious, if it turns out that you look at it and it's like, oh, that looks like a trail, and then it's just
Right.
not. He could have mistaken. Theoretically, he could have mistaken the creek for a trail.
Which
He,
you could easily do because they look kind of similar if it's a divot,
Mhm.
because that's what lots of streams and rivers look like when they're heavily snowed over. Just kind of a little divot in the landscape.
My buddy has some land down in Virginia that has a dry creek on it. I might um I doubt well, actually he's employed by me, so he probably would do it if I asked him. But I might see if since there's snow on the ground here right now, I might ask him, if he can go and take some pictures of that creek because it's not nearly as deep. We're talking its deepest is probably 10 feet. Um but I am curious, looking at it, if there would be, if you could kind of imagine, like, all right, what does this look like with 8 to 10 feet of snow on top of it compared
Yeah.
to a trail, which I would be willing to bet is comparable, especially where it's at its shallowest, up at the top. Because I was
Yeah.
looking at it on the topography, it looks like it up top it starts as just kind of a little creek and then it becomes a canyon later. But that said, do you mind if we go to super chats, take
Oh,
questions?
let's do it.
Let's
Sure.
do it. All right. Let me grab this, pull it over here. Studio. It's usually what I have Aiden for. Ah. Okay, we're gonna go to content. No, not content. Yes, content. No, not content. It's this one. There we go. Perfect. Viewer activity. Here we go. Um. All right. So the very first one is $2 from Miss Mori for not forgetting that you were coming on tonight. Which I am never gonna
Well
live
done.
down. I guess. Oh
Good
boy.
memory right
Yeah,
there.
that
Yeah.
was. I was hoping we'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Hi, buddy. Fandom Maniacs for 10 said, I've been rereading The Lord of the Rings. I am wondering, Tolkien Lord of the Rings video when, like the stories that inspired, or just the lore of Middle Earth? Ooh. So I will say the Harry Potter one we just did tanks pretty hard. So I'm hesitant to do another folklore of movies episode. Also, sorry, he insisted on being allowed up. That said, I love Tolkien and I would love to do a video, but we might just have to wait until we're like Wendigoon size if we ever get there, so that we can make videos and people just watch them.
Right.
Because right where we are right now, if a video tanks, it's like we don't eat for a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Are you full time for
As much
YouTube?
as I can, but I always make sure I got something else because it takes sometimes it's like a month before I
Mm-hmm.
release a video because I'm like OCD about trying to get things like to where I want them to be, or
Exactly.
have things fleshed out as much as I want them to. And
Yeah.
I got 2 videos just sitting on Patreon right now. I'm kind of being held up by sponsorship contracts and all
Isn't
that
that so fun?
fun stuff. I hate it. But yeah, no, I know how you feel.
Yeah. You'll get there. You will get there. At the rate you're going, you will get there. Let's see. Elena de Howler, Werewolf Queen, for 5 said, I'd love to see you two go out to the location and try again, though with any and all possible safety precautions taken. I would love to. That is like the next step for me, at least, is I want to be able to go to these spots.
Crater Lake is amazing. It's beautiful. It's one of
Yeah.
the most beautiful, single just looking out your eyes, just a beautiful panoramic view
Yeah.
of that lake. You know, when you go off trail in the middle of nowhere in the summer, though, it gets significantly less fun. But if we actually accomplish the goal, it would make it worth it in a
Oh
way.
yeah, if we actually got out there. I
Yeah.
mean, if we ever have the opportunity to do it, I will certainly let you know, and you are welcome to
Yeah.
come along.
Yeah. If you're ever in the Pacific Northwest anywhere,
I plan to
Yeah.
be. It's beautiful out there. Just a
Yeah.
little rainy.
Very rainy.
Let's see. Barry Niswander said, is that real wood paneling and a real flannel shirt behind you?
Of course it is. I'm in my sauna. No, I'm just, this is just my cabin walls. It's real wood.
That's nice.
The
This is
flannel's real wood too.
the
Oh.
flannel's real wood. This is vinyl. Uh,
Yeah.
I hope one
I don't
day.
have the budget for a
Yeah,
background.
if you this is literally just you would be amazed at how horrible this looks off camera. It like Kat, Aiden's girlfriend, did a great job making it camera worthy, but we could definitely have added a little bit more to it. If you've seen our recorded videos, that backdrop is real wood. But it's just a backdrop. I would turn the
It
camera
looks
around
good.
and show people, but it's a mess in here.
Yeah.
See, Lost Barai said for $5, I think Jim McGrogan no-clipped into the back rooms, wandered around lost for a bit, then no-clipped back out and fell from the sky to his death. Not the most absurd version of events that I've heard regarding a missing 411 case. People have said much crazier things. I love that we've gone on. We've now moved away from Bigfoot and onto UFOs.
Yeah, you got to.
Like that one felt a little grifty to me. Going from Bigfoot to UFO. I was like, all right, is Bigfoot an alien? Like, how are we tying this together?
That's the next one.
Alien Bigfoot. I've heard Bigfoot's a Nephilim. That's come up.
I've heard that recently too. Yeah.
Nephilim are like making the rounds again, man. It's
right.
Nobody wants to actually read about them.
Right.
Everybody just wants to recite what they heard on TikTok, which I will admit is partially my fault.
The Bible doesn't say that they were big, hairy, ape-like creatures.
No, the Bible doesn't say much about them at all. It's really Enoch that gets things going.
Oh,
which
the Book
is,
of Enoch. That's
yeah,
right.
which
that's
we
right.
That's definitely scripture. It's from the intertestamental period. It's valuable, but it's not like
it's not canon.
Yeah, basically, the Ethiopians consider it canon, but everybody else is like, this is probably philosophical more than anything. Let's see. Barry Niswander said, clear case of a guy lost in the woods, snowshoes, etc. I will admit it seems more like that now. And then he said, snow/improvised shoes means he can get lost easier. Yes, the one thing I would want to find is the snowshoes. Like, if they were to find his snowshoes, I'll be like, okay, yep, case closed.
Well, what I was thinking, if he had them on, whatever they were, even if he fashioned them and he fell, he might have taken them off because it's really uncomfortable to have snowshoes on when you're on your back.
Yeah.
That's
assuming
they might have still been
fall,
attached.
Though.
Right. But they might have still been attached to the boots wherever those went. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is if you're right and he did just fall into the creek and wash down the river further, hence how he ended up a mile away. I mean, 2 years of being washed down a creek, you might lose your boots. It's feasible. Also, if he did fall very far, people losing their boots while falling down mountains is not unheard of at all, especially when they're attached to something else.
That's true.
So I could totally see that. Let's see. Miss Mori said, I had a lot of follow-up questions after watching your 2-part video. This live stream is everything I had hoped for. Thanks to both of you. Glad to be able to help.
Thank you.
Glad to be able to fill in any gaps by interviewing you directly. And then we had several gifted memberships from Pablo Raul Pereira, I think. Pereira. I'm trying my best. It's Pereyra. So we got, he gifted, it looks like 3 memberships. That's awesome. Thank you. That is very kind. Those of you who have memberships now, that means you get a free super chat every month, as well as priority responses to comments, because I can go through and I can select by membership. So if you comment something with a membership, you are much more likely to be answered. We used to answer every comment, but that was 2 years and 374,000 less subs. Let's see. Hammond said they never had the makings of a varsity athlete, which feels like it's a reference to something, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Barry Niswander gifted a membership. Mana Ash just gave us $3 and a nice little thumbs up sticker. Thank you very much. Barry actually gifted several. So did Shadow 91869 Night Crew. Thank you very much. Ryan Whitcup, who is one of our like most consistent viewers. Thank you, man. He says, how can I read / understand / interpret the Bible more? Oh boy. My suggestion with that one is obviously reading. It's great. Get a study Bible that has notations in it. Don't take them at face value. Just consider them. Because every single study Bible is going to have different notes on the same verse. But, read it, consider it, study it. Get yourself an interlinear Bible. That's Greek, Hebrew, and English. That way you can read in context, word for word, what everything is translated as. Definitely have multiple translations. KJV, ASV. I hate the NIV. Screw that. Yeah, and then aside from that, reading the works of the early church fathers like Tertullian, Cyprian, Augustine, all those guys, that really helps. That was huge for me in college. And then, of course, watch, if you got the time, watch, obviously I think Isaiah and I do a solid job, but with the Weird Bible podcast, but Michael Heiser is far and away my favorite biblical scholar. He's a great one to watch. He's unfortunately passed away, but his YouTube channel still has stuff on it. And they're releasing more like unreleased stuff all the time. So I don't know if you're a Bible guy and you have an answer for that, but if you do, feel free to add.
No, I got nothing. Sorry.
Okay, all good. Oh boy. Party like 1776 for 5 said, what I want to know is why would he go there in the first place without snowshoes or skis when he would have known how deep the snow would have been? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a good question. It depends. Maybe he thought it would be plowed more because there are certain areas of that park that do get plowed during the winter. And I don't know if he thought the north entrance was going to be the same and would be open. But Mr. McCullar Sr. seemed to think that his son thought he could get in the north entrance and turn back. And so obviously he thought that was going to be easier than it really was. And, if people go in the south entrance and do some walking around, they did a study on like people who enter the park in the winter, like the year after Charles disappeared. And it showed who enters the park in the winter and why. And people go snowshoeing there and they do all kinds of things there, snowmobiling, cross-country skiing and stuff. Most of them all go in the south entrance. The north is usually all snowmobiling. So it seems clear he didn't have all of his facts if he didn't know that the north entrance would be closed to anyone who didn't have a snowmobile, really. So
overconfident and underprepared.
Exactly.
Which is the downside of teaching your kids everything you know about survival from the military. Because they're probably not going to have the experience to know when the answer should be no.
Yeah.
I mean, even in Boy Scouts, I had situations where I should have been prepared for things that were happening and almost froze to death. So
yeah,
it's a lot easier to get yourself killed than you might think.
True.
Okay. Barry Niswander said, is that real wood paneling behind Enigma? What's the history of his domicile?
I live on a cabin in an island, or on an island, on a small piece of farmland with an orchard.
That is idyllic. I am so jealous of you.
It's a very quaint place out in the middle of, I got a lot of, it's a small cabin, but it's a good piece of land.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I would kill. Land out here it's upsettingly expensive.
Oh, yeah.
The cheapest there was a spot up in the Poconos that I saw that was I don't even want to say where it was because I don't want people buying it before I have a chance to. But it was it was like 20 grand. And that was for an acre. Which I'm like, that's a lot of money for an acre with nothing on it. There's no house here. There's no building. It's not connected to anything. It's just an acre of land for $20,000.
Sometimes
you look in Montana and it's like huge plots
right,
where it's
right.
few
Yeah,
thousand.
it's hard. Sometimes you gotta like know a person who's selling
Hmm.
something to really get a good deal, you know.
Yeah, it's killing me, but I wouldn't have such a big issue if we didn't have a husky who needs space.
Yeah.
The husky is a little too small for the apartment. Let's see, what else do we have? Rye just sent $2. Thank you. Elena de Howler. Wait, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Did I lose it? Um, I lost it for a second. For some reason, my YouTube Studio stuff is running really slow, so I'm having trouble. There we go. Maybe that'll speed it up a bit. Um, there it is. She said, just wanted to thank you for being so open to everyone's thoughts / opinions. I appreciate it. Kellen, the official data, said for 5, said, no question, just money. Thanks for being here, Missing Enigma.
Thank you.
He also says, remember, kids, that the police have 0 legal requirements to help or protect you, which is true.
Yep.
There have been Supreme Court cases about that, which
They get to lie to you and they don't have to help you.
it is terrifying. And unfortunately, sometimes they're the only people who can help.
Yeah.
And then they don't. There are good cops, to be clear. I just a shocking amount of bad ones. XI for 2 said, hey Mattis, love you. Any interesting topics for 24? I'm hoping that as we put together these smiley face killers videos and come through with that analysis video, I'm hoping that satisfies everybody's need, because fortunately people just aren't going missing like they used to. Everybody's always like, you should do missing 411, and I'm like, thankfully nobody is going missing.
Right.
I would prefer not to. All right. Ben Leb sent €6 and said, greets from Germany. No question currently. Pretty happy with your content, guys. Thanks. Thank you. Thornbury said, the most confusing one for me is still Paul LeMay. Also, sorry I couldn't join this evening, y'all. Paul LeMay was a weird one. Have you looked at that?
No.
It was this Mount Marathon race up
Oh,
in...
yes.
Yeah.
I did do that one.
Yeah, Seward. Yeah,
yes,
I don't think it's necessarily like impossible that he really did just kind of go the wrong way. It's just very weird that he went missing as quickly as he did.
Right. He was the last in line of that race, right?
Yeah, and he was like in
slower
view
than everyone else
of the turnaround. Like he should have known, and they're like, maybe he just kept going because he did. I mean, the simplest explanation in that one is that he just kept going because he didn't realize where it was and fell into a crevice. In which case it's negligence on the part of the race, like staff, because somebody should have stayed up there.
The staff didn't they say no one was left in the race or something? And even though he was still up there at some point,
so
I feel like
it's unclear exactly what happened. There may have been some miscommunications, but basically the people at the top thought that all of the racers had come through. They pack up, They start walking down. They run into Paul LeMay. And he's like, I know I'm late. Can I still finish the race? They say, I mean, yeah, it's just like 200 yards up that way. It's the turnaround. Just, turn around and come back down. After that, nobody sees him again. So on the one hand, it's very possible that he got up there, that they should have waited for him, that somebody should have gone the 200 yards with the old guy and made sure he made it out safe. Like, first of all, no matter what actually happened to the guy, that's a problem. That should have happened. Somebody should have been following him. Again, we're not talking like he had a mile left to go. He had like 200 yards. Somebody should have been like, all right, you know what? I'm tired. It's been a long day. I'm cold. But somebody should make sure he's all right. Either way, that should have happened. But it's very possible that he did just keep going. And the reason they didn't find him below that point is because he just wasn't there. It is a little weird that nobody has found his body, but
yeah, I know. Mount Marathon is like all slippery shale, if I recall correctly.
It's an extremely difficult climb.
Yeah, but still, you would think that even if a body rolled down, they might find it at some point.
Or that cadaver dogs would find it somewhere, but nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there haven't been cadaver dogs sent out, but you would think at this point, it is
kind of
isolated.
That one was on the TV show, the Alaska State Troopers TV show. I remember that.
It's a weird story.
Yeah.
but like all of these, it's much less inexplicable than it's made out to be.
That's yeah.
So it's always like I'm still in a lot of these cases. I'm like, that's still really weird, but it feels more like there's just something we haven't learned yet than
Right.
that Bigfoot did it. There are a few that I'm like, that seems like Bigfoot did it. And by Bigfoot, I do not mean the Gimlin tape Bigfoot. I mean a more nebulous thing that I haven't decided what it is yet, but probably like human colonies out there that never got past the Stone Age, which doesn't seem plausible anymore, but 200 years ago does.
I'll keep my mind open to it.
Exactly. That's where I am. Is I'm like, all right, I could see that. Like this is what I'm okay with. This is what I could vibe with, and then that's where I'm gonna stop for my own sanity. Which I think is growth, because originally I was saying the Wendigo did it.
There you go.
Yeah, but Aiden, by the way, you can, I guess you probably could write that super chat off of your taxes. We'll call that even. CM for 10 said, was drugged in a Philly bar and briefly faded in near the river and thought, this is how I become a Lore Lodge episode. In that moment of clarity, I found a taxi. Thanks for possibly saving my life.
See, you're doing the Lord's work.
I'm glad you survived. Unfortunately, probably the same exact thing happened to Tommy Booth, and he didn't. So you may have almost become a smiley face killer episode. Email me, because I'm curious about what happened. You don't have to, if you want to use like a throwaway email to not give any specifics away, that'd be fine. But I am curious, like if I end up, because what I've been doing is I've been taking all of these cases and putting dots on a map and being like, all right, are there any places in common, any routes in common, anything we need to look at? So if you were drugged in a Philly bar and fell into a river, then I would certainly like to know what happened, especially because Philly's right there, and I don't want to do that myself.
Oh, that's good. Someone needs to put together a map of like the truly unexplainable ones that really are kind of like, well, this seems iffy. You know?
That's what I'm working on. I want to find a way to make them like, I want to do like a basic like Google My Maps kind of thing, but then I also want to find a way to like put up a website where people can drop their own pins in. But obviously with like, you need to submit documentation.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I'm going to need a newspaper article saying that the body was found here, not just like, I heard he was here. Or maybe we'll do it so that like there's you can submit verified information and get like a green check or a green dot, and you could submit like, hearsay and get an orange dot, something like that. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. This was something I started working on 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So Shadow Night Cruise became a member, him or herself. Thank you. Nove A42 for 5 said, thoughts on the Sierra camp tapes. Also would love to see a collab video with you two. We can definitely talk about that, because I'd be happy to do a joint video.
Sure.
But yeah, do you know the Sierra camp tapes?
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts?
They definitely sound bizarre, but it's hard for me to get to a point where I'm like, oh, well, that's a Bigfoot, or that's, because I don't know, people do weird things sometimes and fabricate weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those sounds are something that couldn't be fabricated somehow, but I'm open to the idea that they are in fact big feet saying those weird noises. That's on, I don't know.
That's kind of where I am too. From what I looked at with the way they plotted it all out on vocal registers and stuff, it was certainly interesting seeing like the variation and how it seemed like it was too broad for a normal sized person. And then people were like, well, there are people who are over 7 foot out there. They said somebody would have to be like 7'4" or something to have a trachea and a larynx long enough to produce those sounds.
Interesting.
I think it was like the depth specifically was the one that like humans shouldn't be able to get that low, and also get that high. Basically, was like it was the difference. It was the distance between the two spots that was inhuman, not the depth or the high pitch. It was like the fact that it could do both was weird. But somebody was like, oh, well, there's people who are over 7'4", and it's like, yeah, like 1,800 of them in the entire world. Like they probably were not on that mountain.
I just
Chances
get
are
a
that
lot of I get a lot of questions in my own head when I think about these things. Like as far as I've seen, there isn't a whole lot of tape in the Sierra tapes,
it's like
unless
4
I'm
minutes.
wrong. Right. And these guys said they went up there like every season and
Hmm.
were experiencing this. And I'm like, you should have like hours, right?
You would think.
More? Like where is all of it? Like I always want like the full length whatever you were doing that led up to the sounds and after, because it helps me believe
Mhm.
it more.
Yeah.
You know, if I
I
yeah.
definitely think it would have helped if this is something that happened 10 years ago when everybody had a camera in their pocket instead of their one journalist friend being up there with them with his film. Like,
Yeah, so what year were they again? The
it was, I
Sierra
think,
tapes?
72, I want to say.
And it was a journalist who was the one who recorded it?
Yeah. So the guys who were going up, who were experiencing it for a couple of years, as the story goes, at least, Ron Moorhead was, I think, the one who first experienced it. I think Al Burgundy was I want to say the journalist who recorded it. They basically were going up, and from the way the story is told by them, Al did not believe it. He thought that they were screwing with him, and they were like, "No, dude, come on, bring your camera, bring your microphone. We'll go up. You'll see for yourself." And this is what made Al into more of a believer in the whole thing. Is when he went up and he recorded this. But yeah, it's basically that he was a video journalist, and he brought up his camera and his microphone, and they sat in their little hut thing and recorded it. I will say, surprises me a little bit that when that happens, you'd continue going up there. But then again, they were armed, they were experienced in the woods. I don't necessarily think it's out of the question. Um, I think there's with that one, there's enough for me to. I use that as a jumping off point, like for my consideration of the possibilities. I don't think there's enough in those tapes to prove anything, but it does give you kind of an idea. Like, all right, well, maybe this is a good place to look. Maybe this is a good thing to think
Right.
about. I compare it to the Saskets up in British Columbia. The Chehalis people talked about these. They were 6.5 to 7.5 feet tall, more broad than we are, a little bit hairier. Now, keep in mind these are Native Americans telling this. Uh, Native Americans are typically less hairy than Europeans. So to them, hairy could be what we look like theoretically. They suggest the people talking to J.W. Burns suggested it was even more so, because he was white and they didn't say that he looked like you. They said they were hairier than us.
Hmm.
And they also talk about them being capable of human language, and living out in the woods and living in caves, being very strong, very fast, kind of aggressive, things like that, which all do sound like plausible traits for an isolated group of humans who have maybe evolved into those conditions over the course of thousands and thousands of years. You probably wouldn't see something akin to the difference between humans and Neanderthals, but people who are on average 7 feet tall, that can develop over the course of 10,000 years easily. We see tribes in Africa that are the same way, where they're exceptionally tall. Dutch people are exceptionally tall, and that's not even that's several hundred years of a specific breeding population. So I think a lot of people are very quick to dismiss the concept, but I also think it's not helped by the Bigfoot community often insisting that this is more like a great ape than a large person. Um,
Yeah, I've always found the best evidence or what I find most compelling is usually the native lore and stuff that came from a long time ago. The newer evidence to me is never as it's never as convincing.
exactly.
Especially in the age when so much can be fabricated and faked, and we get so much of that. Um,
Drives me
yeah,
insane. Let me go back to viewer activity here. God, this is just running so slow. It's weird. Like almost ready to pull it up on my phone. It's because there's all these little like animations YouTube is added into everything, and there's 8 million different things going on right now. Okay, here we go. Uh, Elena de Howler, Werewolf Queen, also said my twin brother's name is Enoch. It's a cool name, cool character too in the Bible. Like just really interesting guy to read about. Let's see. Agamemnon's gym bag said, was the Jeeper from Jeepers Creepers supposed to be the Mothman? I have never seen Jeepers Creepers, to be honest. Might be a cardinal sin. Have you?
yeah, I've seen it. I don't really see the Mothman connection, but
I'm looking. I'm trying to figure. Is that really as recent as 2001, or is that a remake?
yeah, I think 2001 sounds right. They made a second one too.
Oh, I always. Oh, the song is really old. Okay, the song's from the from
Yeah,
the 30s.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's yeah. I don't know that that would. I'm looking through. I'll have to watch it. Maybe next time we do like a horror movie lore video, we'll hit that one. But I just don't know enough about it to answer the question. Also gonna try and get through. I'm just gonna get through the ones that are already in here because I'm sure you've got stuff to do. So I don't want to keep you too long. But
No worries.
see, Kira's Dollhouse Sweets Crochet became a member. Thank you. Or no, has been a member for 7 months. Thank you. XI said, I will go missing so you have content. Please don't. Please don't. I will be fine. I will survive. Although if you want to, like, I don't know, find a way to hack into the government's database and delete everybody's student loans, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
That is currently where all of my money is going. The government does not like it when you make money. They're just like, no, give me all of that. Let's see. Kellen, the official data, said, next time I'm camping in the Washington Olympic Mountains, I'll let you know in case I go missing. Good. Please do. We will come find
Appreciate
you, hopefully. Agamemnon Jibbag for 2 said, all of the milk train people have gone missing. I don't know if they've gone missing. I just think they're being quiet. There just hasn't been a milk train in a while. That is not an invitation. Party Like 1776 said, it's possible he was buried in a shale landslide if he fell and started a small one. That's a good point about Paul LeMay. Is if he fell and a landslide covered him up, that would definitely be a problem.
Could be.
Cadaver Dog would be your only chance at that point.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing that's going to be able to sift through shale like that.
Wouldn't be the first time something like that happened, too. I remember Tatum Morrell was a case that happened fairly recently. And I remember she was a missing 411 case for like a year before she was found buried under a landslide.
Was it Cadaver Dogs?
Nope. Someone came across her boots sticking out of the rocks.
Yep. Never hike alone. Or at the very least, tell somebody exactly where you're going and do not stray from the route. Like, be like, here's where I'm going. If you don't find me somewhere along here, something happened. See, I did miss one from Barry Niswander who said, did you go to the Absinthe Bar in New Orleans? Unfortunately, no. After the food poisoning incident, I was a little cautious. I did go to a phenomenal steakhouse called Doris, though. Oh my God, it was good. They also, as Wendigoon took us to another steakhouse, but the name is escaping me right now. But that was also very good. It wasn't food poisoning either. We think we got like some sort of bug that's going around because we got it at different times. But let's see. Party Like 77. Okay, I got his. Bigfoot is a ghillie suit for interdimensional travelers. I love these theories. These are great.
I've heard something similar to that before.
Yeah, like it's the space suit the aliens are wearing.
Right.
To blend in. They got bad intel. All of their intel was from 500,000 years ago, so they made their human suits wrong.
Right.
That's honestly not a horrible one to start telling people that the aliens visited us, like, that they were looking at us 2 million years ago and they were like, okay, that's what we need to look like. And then by the time they got here, we looked like this. I like that one. I want somebody to write that movie.
Right? Oh,
yeah, because I'm not going to do it. I just don't have the time. Plus, nobody's bought the last 3 movies I wrote, so. Air One Sam for 10 said, planning on doing a law research paper on cannibalism, was wondering if you could share your sources or give me advice on where to find information for on some of the old stories and videos. I sent an email. I will look for it. For a lot of it, unfortunately, the answer is going to be JSTOR, so make sure you have a JSTOR subscription. It's $20 a month. It's not bad. And if you're doing it for work, then you can write it off your taxes. That said, if you're not going to write off more than $12,000, don't take my advice on the taxes thing because it's not going to do anything for you. Because it's standard deduction. But yeah, I'll try and get back to you with some stuff. The Dyatlov Pass video, that one didn't involve cannibalism. What was I thinking? Donner Party. Donner Party, I can definitely give you some sources on. Let's see. Did you get a hurricane at least? When you say a hurricane, do you mean like a hurricane as in Katrina? Because thankfully, no. One of my youngest school memories is fundraising for that. Going around door to door. Yeah, but if you mean an item of food, then no. So the answer in both cases is no. I'm just curious about what specifically you meant. But that does look like we are through essentially everything. And I would go through and look for other questions, that are interesting, but my computer is running so absurdly slowly right now. So I think we'll kill it there. But yeah. All right.
Was good.
Okay. Also, just on the off chance that the person is being serious, Clutch Bleach said, unsubscribing everyone before I unsubscribe from life. Have a good life, Lore Lodge people. Don't unsubscribe from life. Life sucks sometimes, but it does have its moments that make it worth it, I promise. And I don't know about you. I was in some dark spots before I started doing this. And just changing my career has made my life immeasurably better. So there's a lot of things you can try before you try that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't talk about it, but I mean, 5 years ago, I was homeless. I was a drug addict. You know,
It's
you can turn your life around.
yeah,
It's if
it's
you decide to, you really can.
yeah, I mean, in coming out of college, I was drinking a lot. Like I drank a lot, and it wasn't a continuation of me partying. It was like I was just Wednesday night. I'll have a few glasses of whiskey, and then it's 7.
Yeah.
So
You could, yeah,
yeah,
everyone has their own challenges. You got to find a way to get through and come out the other side.
exactly.
And they're good lessons.
There's no matter how bad things seem, it's there are a lot of things you can try to improve your situation before you go to the nuclear
Absolutely.
option.
There's always hope. There's
Yeah,
always hope.
yeah, and sometimes if you can move, try moving. If you can go back to school, try going back to school. Switch jobs if possible. Unfortunately, it's a lot harder to just disappear these days and escape your problems. But there's stuff you can try, and I would recommend trying it before you go the self-deletion route. Amongst them, I would be sad. I would be sad if I saw that message and never saw another one. So if that means anything to you, I hope to see you in the chat next week. But to kind of end things at this point, because it's nearly 9 p.m. And that is way too long for this show. I want to throw things to you really quick. If there's anything you felt like you didn't have a chance to say, or if you want to shout out your channels and your work.
I think we covered it pretty well. Thanks for having a chat with me.
Of course, thanks for coming on.
I wanted to talk to you because you're really the only other person in the missing person space that I have a lot of respect for, and you take it really seriously and you do your research well.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. So thanks for having me on and talking to me. And anyone who wants to can go over to my channel, The Missing Enigma. I do the best I can on any case that I can, and try to find, I'm interested in the paranormal and stuff, if that's where the case takes me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't try to, just be a skeptical guy. I like to stay open-minded on everything. And so, I'm waiting for that one case that, I finally find Bigfoot, or finally find, what, but
it would be cool.
I'm waiting for it,
It would be really cool to find Bigfoot.
Yeah, but so if anyone wants to check that out, Missing Enigma, and Patreon too, if you do like my videos and you want to support, there's almost always an extra video or two on there that hasn't come out yet. And yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate anyone who supports my channel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've rapidly become one of my favorite other creators in the space. I think that you've done some phenomenal work. And do you draw those everything yourself?
Yeah, although I think I'm trying to move away from that because it's like
It's a
it,
lot
it
of
was
work.
cool. It is a lot of work, and it was cool before AI art came out and everyone started kind of do. I see AI art on like all the thumbnails now, and I
Hmm.
feel like I feel like it's less cool now, since
Yeah.
other people are doing it or something. And it takes so much time. I'll still do it, but I'm less focused on the art these days. Especially there's only so many times I can draw like a hunter walking in the woods before I'm really bored of doing
Right.
it.
Yeah.
I reuse a lot of the same drawings and stuff as if I can, but you know, art's just one of those things I was good at. And when I made my channel, I was like, well, I'm going to take anything I'm good at and I'm going to try and put it into the channel or anything I'm interested in. And,
Yeah.
that's just how it came out. But yeah,
Yeah.
the art's
Well,
cool.
I think that the art is one of my favorite parts with yours. So I'm
Appreciate it.
yeah. I just wanted to make sure people were aware of it, especially if it's going away. Catch it
Well,
while
it's
you
not
can.
going away completely, but,
Yeah.
might be
But
less artwork.
all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I highly recommend everybody check you out. I mean, you have done some great work, and I think you deserve the attention. Especially
Thanks, man.
considering how many people out there get the attention and don't deserve it. So thank you so much for coming on, and to
Thank
those
you.
viewing, thank you for the chats, thank you for engaging, thank you for hanging out and making it so that we can do a job like this, because it really is the best job I've ever had and the only job I ever hope to have. So thank you guys so much, and I will see those of you who watch the personal channel on Tuesday for the reaction stream. I'm not sure what we'll be reacting to, but we'll find out. All right, see you guys.